Maria walked quickly along the dimly lit street, her worn shoes tapping against the cracked pavement. The city was alive with noise, but she hardly noticed it. Her mind was filled with the day's exhaustion. The endless hours she spent cleaning offices, washing dishes, and running errands for strangers just to make ends meet. She carried a small bag over her shoulder, heavier than it seemed, filled with her few belongings and the modest groceries she had bought earlier. The cold wind cut through her thin coat and she shivered, hugging herself as she moved past shuttered stores and flickering streetlights. She had grown used to the city's harshness. She knew how to keep her head down, to avoid trouble, to keep going even when life felt like it was pushing her to the ground. But tonight felt different. There was a quiet in the alleyways that she hadn't noticed before, a stillness that seemed almost alive. She took a deep breath, trying to shake off the fatigue that weighed on her shoulders. Every step brought her closer to her small apartment, a place she rarely had time to enjoy, a place where she could rest her aching body. As she turned a corner, a faint sound reached her ears. At first, she thought it was her imagination. The city was full of noises, sirens, car horns, shouting, footsteps, dogs barking. But this was different. It was softer, weaker, almost fragile. It was a sound that made her stop in her tracks. A small, desperate cry, like a whisper that had traveled too far to be heard. Maria's heart tightened. She wasn't someone who usually intervened in things that didn't concern her. She had learned to survive by keeping her focus on herself. But this sound stirred something inside her, a pull she couldn't ignore. She paused, listening carefully, trying to locate the source. The cry came again, quieter this time, a shaky, pitiful noise that made her stomach churn. It was a sound that belonged to someone helpless, someone who needed help. And she knew in that instant that she could not walk away. She followed the sound down a narrow alley. The walls closed on either side, the shadows deep and strange. Her steps were cautious, every nerve on alert. The cry became clearer, more urgent. Her heart raced as she approached a pile of dumpsters tucked in the corner, partly hidden from the main street. She slowed, her hands trembling slightly. The cry came again, and this time she realized it was a child, a very small child. Alone and scared. Maria's mind raced. She had to act, but she didn't want to make the situation worse. She called softly, "Hello? Is someone there?" The crying paused for a moment, then started again, louder and more frantic. Her eyes searched the shadows, and then she saw movement, a tiny wriggling bundle in the corner of the dumpster area. Her heart caught in her throat. It was a little girl, maybe 2 or 3 years old, her small body wrapped in a thin, dirty blanket. Her eyes were wide with fear, staring at Maria as if trying to figure out whether she was safe. Without thinking, Maria knelt down, keeping her voice soft. "It's okay, sweetie. I'm here. You're safe now." The child flinched at her words, but didn't cry louder, as if sensing that Maria meant no harm. Maria gently reached out, careful not to startle her. "Do you want to come with me?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. The girl hesitated, then slowly let Maria scoop her up into her arms. She was light, fragile, and trembling. Maria held her close, trying to warm her with her own body heat. Maria's mind raced with questions. How had this little girl ended up here? Who could have left her in such a place? And most importantly, what should she do now? She looked around the alley, hoping for some sign of a parent or guardian, but it was empty. Silent except for the girl's occasional sobs. She knew she couldn't stay there. It was too dangerous, and the child needed proper care. Maria tucked her coat around the girl as best she could and pulled out her phone, dialing the emergency number with shaking hands. "Hello, yes," she said when someone answered. I found a child. She's alone. She's very small and she looks scared. Please, you need to come quickly." She gave them the location, her voice tight with urgency. She didn't hang up until she was sure the dispatcher had all the details and help was on the way. While she waited, Maria kept the girl close, whispering soft words of comfort. "It's okay, sweetie. You're safe. No one's going to hurt you." The girl clung to her, her small hands gripping Maria's coat as if she had found an anchor in a storm. Maria could feel the child's tiny body shaking, her tears soaking through the blanket. Maria wanted to take all the fear away, wanted to make the world safe for her in that moment. But all she could do was hold her and wait. The minutes felt like hours. But finally, the distant sound of sirens reached them. Maria's heart lifted slightly, relief washing over her. Soon, 2 officers arrived, their expressions serious as they took in the scene. Maria explained what had happened, how she found the child, and the details she could observe about her condition. The officers carefully took the child from Maria, wrapping her in a proper blanket and checking her over. They asked Maria to stay nearby, to answer questions and provide any information she could. Maria felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, because the child was finally in professional hands. Anxiety, because she had no idea what would happen next. And something else, a quiet satisfaction, a warmth in her chest that came from doing the right thing. She watched as the little girl clung briefly to her hand before being gently led away by the officers, her tiny face peeking back at Maria with wide, uncertain eyes. That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the little girl, wondering where she had come from and how someone could abandon such an innocent life. She replayed the moment over and over, the soft cry, the trembling body, the fragile trust the child had placed in her arms. She felt a deep, unexplainable connection, as if their meeting had been meant to happen, as if some invisible thread had drawn them together. The following days were a blur of curiosity and concern. Maria checked the news, hoping for updates, but the story hadn't made headlines. She didn't know the child's name or who she belonged to. She couldn't stop thinking about her little face, the way she had looked up at Maria with fear and hope mixed in her eyes. It was a look that would stay with her forever, a reminder of the fragile beauty of life and the sudden, unexpected ways it could change. Maria returned to her routine, to the jobs that barely paid her bills and the small apartment that felt increasingly lonely, but something inside her had shifted. She walked with a little more awareness, noticing the people around her, the lives that often went unnoticed in the rush of the city. She thought about children, about the people who had no one to care for them. She wondered how many cries went unheard every day. Then, one afternoon, a message appeared on her phone. It was from the local police station. They needed to speak with her about the child she had found. Maria's heart skipped. She hurried to the station, her mind racing with questions and possibilities. When she arrived, she was taken to a small office, where an officer sat with a file in front of him. "Thank you for coming in," he said. "We've been investigating the case since the child was found, and we think you might be able to help us. You're the first person to see her since she was abandoned." Maria nodded, her hands gripping her bag tightly. She listened as the officer explained that the child had no identification, no known relatives, and no one had come forward to claim her. They were hoping Maria could recall any details, any clues, anything that might help them find her family. Maria thought hard. She described everything: the blanket, the bracelet on the child's wrist, the way she had been wrapped up, the location, and the time. The officer took notes, asking gentle questions. Maria noticed how carefully he treated her answers, as if understanding that this was more than just information, it was a life. As she left the station, Maria felt a mixture of hope and apprehension. She didn't know if she would ever learn the child's story, but she knew that something extraordinary had begun. A single cry, almost lost in the noise of the city, had changed everything. And Maria, a woman who had learned to survive on her own, had become part of something bigger, something miraculous. Without even realizing it, that night, Maria sat by her small window, looking out at the city lights. The streets seemed quieter now, more alive in a different way. She thought about the little girl, about the fragile life she had held in her arms. And she whispered a wish into the darkness, hoping that wherever the child was, she was safe and warm. And somewhere deep inside, Maria felt a sense of purpose, a quiet knowledge that her life, too, was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. Because sometimes, all it takes is one cry, one moment of courage, to set off a chain of events that can touch more lives than we ever know. And in the heart of a bustling city, amidst the noise and the struggle, a miracle had quietly begun. The next morning, Maria woke earlier than usual. her mind restless and buzzing with thoughts about the little girl she had found. She had tried to put it out of her mind, to focus on her work, on the routine that kept her going. But she couldn't. Something about that fragile, frightened child stayed with her, as if the girl's presence had left a mark deep inside her heart. Maria knew that she couldn't just forget. She needed to know more, needed to understand where the girl had come from and who could possibly have left her alone in such a dangerous place. She started her day with the usual chores, cleaning a small office building downtown. Her hands worked mechanically, scrubbing floors and wiping counters. But her mind wandered constantly back to the alley, to the child's wide, frightened eyes. Maria thought about the bracelet the child had been wearing, a small, delicate piece of jewelry that seemed far too precious for someone in such desperate circumstances. Something about it didn't add up. Who would leave a child with that on her wrist? Why would someone abandon her in a dark alley when she clearly came from somewhere that cared about her? After finishing her morning shift, Maria decided to take a walk through the neighborhood near where she had found the child. She walked slowly, scanning the streets, looking for any signs, any hints that could lead her to answers. She asked shopkeepers if they had seen anything unusual, described the child's blanket and her appearance, and even asked if anyone had noticed someone leaving the alley late at night. Most people shook their heads, too busy with their own lives to pay attention to a single small event. But a few had vague recollections. A stranger moving quickly, carrying something small, or a car parked suspiciously nearby. Nothing concrete, but every detail felt important to Maria. That evening, Maria sat in her tiny apartment, surrounded by the soft hum of the city outside her window. She opened her laptop and began to research missing children in the area, scanning local news reports and police bulletins. She wrote down names, dates, and locations, cross-checking every piece of information. Her small room, usually a place of quiet exhaustion, had transformed into a headquarters for a mission that had taken over her thoughts completely. She felt a strange sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. A drive to uncover the truth and help a child who had no one to turn to. Days passed and Maria continued her search. She visited local shelters and spoke to social workers, describing the child and the circumstances of her discovery. She asked if anyone knew of a missing girl matching the description, or if any families had reported a lost child. Most had nothing to report, but one woman at a shelter paused when Maria mentioned the bracelet. She leaned closer, her eyes sharp and curious. "That sounds familiar," she said. "There was a report about a missing child with a bracelet just like that a few months ago. She disappeared from a wealthy family, but the trail went cold. No one has seen her since." Maria's heart raced. A missing child from a wealthy family. It made sense now, the bracelet, the careful wrapping, the fear in her eyes. She thought about the life the girl must have come from, a life of comfort suddenly replaced by fear and abandonment. Maria felt a surge of determination. If she could find her family, even if it meant entering a world she had never known, she would do it. The thought of the girl alone, scared, missing from those who loved her was unbearable. She returned to the police station with the new information. Speaking with the same officer who had taken her statement before, she described the shelter worker's memory, the details about the missing child from a wealthy family, and the bracelet. The officer nodded thoughtfully, taking notes and making calls to follow up on the lead. Maria could see the wheels turning, the possibility of progress, and it filled her with cautious hope. While the investigation slowly moved forward, Maria couldn't shake her own feelings of responsibility. She began carrying a small notebook wherever she went, jotting down observations, ideas, and even dreams about what could happen next. She imagined reuniting the girl with her family, seeing the tears of relief and happiness on their faces, and knowing that she had played a part in that miracle. It was a vision that kept her going, even through long shifts and sleepless nights. One evening, Maria decided to visit the alley again, not because she expected to find anything new, but because she felt a need to reconnect with the place where everything had begun. The city was quiet, the streets bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. She walked slowly, her footsteps echoing against the walls. The dumpster corner looked the same, yet different, empty now, silent but still holding the memory of that night. Maria knelt down, placing a gentle hand on the edge of the dumpster as if it were a sacred place. "I'll find you," she whispered into the dark. "I promise." Back at her apartment, Maria received a call from the police. They had some news. A private investigator hired by the wealthy family had been trying to locate their missing daughter for months, but had come up empty. The officer explained that Maria's observations and the bracelet detail had given them a new lead. There was a possibility that the girl she had found was indeed the missing child, and they wanted Maria to come to the station to help confirm it. Maria felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had always lived her life quietly, keeping her distance from matters that didn't directly affect her, but now she was on the brink of something extraordinary. She hurried to the station, her mind racing with questions. Who was this family? What had happened to the girl? And most importantly, what would it feel like to see her safe and reunited? When she arrived, the officer led her to a room where the child was waiting, sitting quietly on a small chair. Maria froze for a moment, her heart skipping a beat. It was Hertha, same small, frightened girl from the alley, now wrapped in a soft, warm blanket, her eyes wide but curious. Maria knelt down, letting the child see her, and the girl's face lit up with recognition, a small, hesitant smile appearing. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. Maria had become a part of the child's life, a figure of safety and care, someone the girl remembered and trusted. The police and investigator asked Maria a few more questions. Carefully observing the child's reactions, the bracelet was examined and photographs were compared with the missing child's records. Everything matched. Maria's heart swelled with emotion. She had done it. She had found the girl, and soon she would be reunited with her family. The thought brought tears to her eyes. After the formalities, Maria sat quietly, letting the moment sink in. She realized how much this child had changed her life, too. The search, the worry, the hope had awakened something inside her that she hadn't felt in years. A sense of purpose, a connection to something bigger than herself. She thought about the child's fear, the loneliness she must have felt, and how something as small as one act of attention, hearing a cry, and responding had set off this chain of events. Over the next few days, Maria worked closely with the investigators, providing every detail she could remember about the alley, the blanket, the bracelet, and the child's reactions. She also visited the shelter again, speaking with the workers and gathering more information about the child's time in the city before she was found. Every small piece of information added to the puzzle, bringing them closer to the child's family. Finally, a meeting was arranged with the family. Maria felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. She didn't know what to expect, how they would react to her, or how the child would respond to seeing her parents. But she knew one thing. This was the moment everything she had worked for, everything she had felt responsible for, would come to fruition. The day of the meeting arrived. Maria accompanied the investigators to the family's home, a grand house that seemed like a world apart from the city streets she knew so well. She felt a twinge of nervousness, unsure how someone from such a different life would see her. But the child, now calmer and more confident, clung briefly to Maria's hand before being led into the home by the investigators. Maria watched from a distance, her heart in her throat. Inside, the child's parents waited, their faces a mixture of hope, fear, and anticipation. When they saw their daughter, their expressions broke into tears of relief and joy. The child ran to them, her small arms wrapping around her mother and father as they held her tightly. Maria felt a lump in her throat, overcome by the sight. She had been part of something extraordinary, something that words could hardly capture. After the initial reunion, the parents thanked Maria profusely, their gratitude sincere and heartfelt. They wanted to ensure she knew how much her courage and care had meant, how her quick thinking had brought their daughter back to them. Maria felt a warmth she had never experienced before, a sense of fulfillment that came from helping someone in a way that truly mattered. That night, as she walked back to her apartment, Maria thought about the journey she had been on. It had started with a simple cry, a moment of instinctive care, and it had grown into something miraculous. She realized that, even in a world full of hardship, small acts of kindness could create ripples that changed lives in ways she could never have imagined. The little girl had found her family, and Maria had found something too, a reminder that courage, compassion, and persistence could lead to extraordinary outcomes. And in the quiet of her apartment, Maria smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning of a journey that would continue to unfold, full of hope, wonder, and unexpected miracles. The news of the little girl being found spread quietly at first, mostly through the investigators and the police. It was a small miracle that no one had expected. A story that began in the darkness of a city alley and was now moving toward a world. Maria had only glimpsed through newspaper articles and passing glimpses from a bus window. The next step was crucial. The child needed to be reunited with her family, the family who had been searching desperately for months. Living in quiet despair and hope at the same time, Maria felt a mixture of nervous excitement and apprehension. As she accompanied the investigators to the mansion where the girl's parents lived, the building was massive, set back from the street with tall gates, manicured gardens, and a quiet security presence that reminded Maria that she had entered a very different world. She clutched her bag tightly, her mind replaying every moment. Since she had first heard that soft, desperate cry in the alley, she thought about the girl, about her wide eyes, her trembling hands, and the fragile trust she had shown. Maria knew that this moment was going to change everything, for the child, for the family, and, ways she hadn't realized yet, for herself as well. The investigators led Maria and the little girl to a softly lit living room. The girl paused, gripping Maria's hand tightly. Her small body was tense, as if she sensed the importance of what was about to happen. Maria knelt beside her, whispering gentle reassurances. "It's okay. You're safe now. They've been looking for you and they're very happy to see you." The girl nodded slowly, taking in Maria's words. But her eyes remained wide with cautious curiosity. Then the door opened and the family entered. The sight was overwhelming. Mother and father, both exhausted and tear-stained, stepped forward, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and hope. The mother's eyes immediately filled with tears, and the father's hands shook slightly as he reached out. The little girl hesitated for a heartbeat. Then, sensing safety, she let go of Maria's hand and ran to her mother. The embrace was intense and emotional. The mother held her daughter tightly as if she would never let go, whispering her name over and over. The father knelt down, wrapping his arms around both of them, tears streaming down his face. Maria watched quietly, overwhelmed by the scene, feeling the weight of all the months of fear, worry, and longing that had led to this moment. She had been part of the journey, but now she realized just how immense the relief and joy of reunion were. The child looked back at Maria, her eyes wide with recognition, and smiled faintly. It was a small, tentative smile, but it was enough. Maria felt her heart lift. In that moment, she understood the depth of connection that could form between strangers in extraordinary circumstances. She had become a bridge between fear and safety, between loss and reunion. After the initial emotional reunion, the family wanted to speak with Maria. They led her to a quieter room, away from the child, where they could express their gratitude. The mother spoke first, her voice trembling. "We don't even know how to thank you. You found her when we had almost given up hope. You kept her safe. You saved our family." The father nodded, his hands gripping Maria's tightly. "We will never forget what you have done. You have given us a gift that we can never repay." Maria shook her head, feeling tears in her eyes. "I just did what I had to do," she said softly. I heard her cry. I couldn't walk away. Anyone would have done the same. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. Not everyone would have stopped. Not everyone would have been willing to act in that moment of fear and uncertainty. She had acted on instinct and courage, and that had made all the difference. The conversation turned to practical matters. Family explained that the child had been missing for months, taken during a brief moment when a caregiver had not been watching closely. They had hired private investigators, filed police reports, and searched everywhere they could think of, but the trail had gone cold. It was Maria's discovery, her careful observation, and quick action that had brought the child back to them. They wanted to ensure she was recognized for her bravery and compassion. Maria listened, humbled. She had never imagined that a single act, hearing a cry in a dark alley, could lead to such a profound impact. She thought about the child, the fear she had felt, and the small trust she had placed in Maria's arms. That trust had changed everything. The parents invited Maria to stay for a meal, something they insisted upon as a small token of their gratitude. Maria hesitated, feeling out of place in the grand house, surrounded by luxury she had never known. But she accepted, wanting to be present for the child, to share in the relief and happiness that had come from her actions. During the meal, Maria watched the little girl interact with her parents, gradually opening up, laughing quietly at first, then more freely. The family spoke softly, asking gentle questions, telling stories, and allowing the child to feel safe and loved. Maria felt a quiet joy, a sense of completeness, as she observed the child reclaiming her life, returning to the warmth and security she had been denied for so long. As the evening progressed, the family turned their attention to Maria again. "We want you to be part of her life," the mother said. "She knows you, she trusts you, and we want you to continue being someone she can turn to." The father nodded in agreement. "If you are willing, we would be honored to have you as a friend and a guardian figure. You have already done so much for her. We would like you to remain a part of her life." Maria was overwhelmed by the offer. She had never imagined this outcome. Her life had been simple, focused on survival, on working hard just to keep herself afloat. And now, in an instant, she was being asked to step into a new world, to take on a role she had never anticipated. But as she looked at the child, smiling, shyly, and reaching out for her hand, Maria knew her answer. She nodded slowly, a quiet determination in her eyes. "I would like that very much," she said. The family expressed their gratitude again, their voices filled with sincerity. They explained that they wanted to provide support for Maria as well, offering opportunities for work, education, and a chance to improve her life. Maria felt a lump in her throat. The generosity and kindness of people she had never known before was overwhelming. It was not just about gratitude. It was about recognizing the humanity and courage in someone who had acted selflessly. Maria walked home, the city streets seeming quieter and softer than before. She thought about the child, about the parents, and about the journey that had brought them all together. It had started with a single cry in a dark alley, a moment of instinctive compassion, and it had grown into something extraordinary. Maria realized that life could change in an instant, that courage and kindness could create miracles where none seemed possible. The next days were filled with adjustments. The child began to regain her routine, learning to feel safe and secure in her family's care. Maria visited regularly, helping to ease the transition, reading stories, playing games, and offering gentle guidance. The child's laughter gradually returned, a sound that filled the house with warmth and hope. Maria felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that her actions had made this possible. She also noticed changes in herself. She had always lived cautiously, keeping her focus narrow to survive. But now, she was beginning to understand the power of reaching beyond her own circumstances, of connecting with others in meaningful ways. She realized that life was not just about survival, but about making a difference, about creating moments that could change lives forever. The family expressed their gratitude in small, consistent ways. They involved Maria in their lives, introducing her to friends, offering support for her work, and ensuring she felt valued and appreciated. Maria, who had once felt invisible in the bustling city, now felt seen, recognized, and needed. It was a new kind of happiness, one built on connection, trust, and shared experience. One afternoon, as Maria walked through the family's garden with the child, she reflected on the journey. She thought about the alley, the cry, the moment she had decided to act. That one decision had led to something she could never have imagined: a reunion, a restored family, and a new path for herself. She realized that life was full of unexpected twists, that small acts could have enormous consequences, and that courage often appeared in the quietest, most unassuming moments. The child tugged at her hand, laughing at a butterfly that had landed nearby. Maria smiled, feeling a joy she had never known. She understood now that the world was not always harsh and unforgiving. There were moments of beauty, of connection, of miracles that could begin with something as simple as listening and responding to a cry. And as she watched the child run ahead, calling back for her to follow, Maria felt a quiet certainty that her life, too, had been transformed. She had stepped into a world she had never known, touched lives in ways she had never imagined, and discovered the profound impact of compassion and courage. For Maria, the journey was far from over. But in that moment, walking beside a little girl who had once been abandoned and was now safe, she felt the quiet power of a single brave choice and the miracle it had begun. The days that followed, the child's reunion with her family, were filled with quiet miracles. Life, which had once been heavy with fear and uncertainty, slowly began to shift for everyone involved. The child, still small and cautious, started to open up in ways that were both delicate and profound. Maria watched with a mixture of pride and tenderness as the girl explored her home, touching objects, examining her surroundings, and gradually learning that this was a safe place. The laughter that had been absent for so long began to appear again, soft at first, almost shy. But growing stronger with each passing day, Maria became a constant presence in the household. She helped guide the child through small routines, teaching her to feel secure, to trust again, and to express herself. Bedtime became a time for stories and gentle conversations. Breakfasts were filled with quiet moments of observation. As the child learned to navigate the family's large kitchen, experimenting with utensils, spilling milk, and laughing at her own mistakes, Maria stayed close, never intrusive, but always ready to offer reassurance or a comforting hand. The parents, though initially overwhelmed by the sudden return of their daughter, found a rhythm with Maria's help. They saw the child's recovery as a shared responsibility, and Maria became a bridge between the past trauma and the hope of a new beginning. She noticed small changes in the parents too. The mother, once tense and restless, began to smile more easily, allowing herself moments of laughter with her daughter. The father, who had seemed stoic and distant, began to express emotions more freely, kneeling beside the child, helping her with simple tasks, and celebrating every small milestone. One afternoon, Maria and the child sat together in the sunlit garden, watching the petals of flowers flutter in the wind. The child pointed excitedly at a butterfly, her small fingers reaching out as if she could catch it. Maria laughed softly, guiding her hand without taking away the wonder of the moment. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said. The child nodded, her eyes sparkling, and in that instant Maria felt the weight of months of fear and loneliness lift away. The child was safe, happy, and beginning to trust the world again. Maria also began to see changes in herself. The experience had stirred something deep within her, a sense of purpose and connection she had never felt before. Her life, once narrowly focused on survival, was now infused with meaning. She discovered a quiet confidence in knowing that her actions had created a positive change, that her willingness to act in a moment of fear had led to something extraordinary. She started to imagine a future where she could continue to help others, where her compassion could make a lasting impact beyond this single act of bravery. The child, curious and intelligent, began to ask questions about the world around her. "Why did you come find me?" she asked one morning, her small face serious as she sat on Maria's lap. Maria paused, choosing her words carefully. "Because I heard you crying, and I wanted to help." "Everyone deserves to be safe," she replied softly. The child nodded thoughtfully, as if trying to understand, then leaned against Maria, a small sigh of contentment escaping her lips. Maria felt a warmth spread through her chest. She realized that trust, once broken, could be rebuilt with patience, care, and consistency. Days turned into weeks, and the child grew more comfortable in her family's home. She learned to speak more confidently, to explore without fear, and to enjoy the simple pleasures of life, running through the garden, helping in the kitchen, or drawing pictures that told her stories. Maria encouraged her creativity, praising her drawings, reading her imaginative tales aloud, and allowing her to express emotions freely. The child's world expanded with each passing day, and Maria witnessed the subtle transformation from fear to joy, from hesitation to curiosity. The family, deeply grateful, wanted to ensure Maria was supported as well. They offered her opportunities for work, helping her access education and training she had never imagined possible. Maria felt both humbled and inspired. She had never expected her life to change in this way. The generosity extended to her was not just about repayment. It was about recognizing her value as a human being, as someone capable of making a profound difference in the lives of others. She accepted their help with gratitude, knowing that this support could allow her to continue helping the child and possibly others in the future. One day, the mother sat down with Maria and spoke quietly. "You've given her something we could never have given her alone," she said. "You brought her back to us, and you've helped her heal. We will always be grateful." Maria nodded, feeling the weight of her words. She understood that her role was more than a temporary presence. She was becoming part of the child's life, a steady anchor in a world that had once been uncertain and frightening. Maria also noticed the small miracles happening around her. The child, who had once flinched at sudden movements, now laughed freely when startled by playful gestures. She learned to climb stairs, to hold a spoon properly, and to call out for her parents without fear. Every step forward was a victory, every smile a testament to resilience and recovery. Maria took joy in these moments, feeling a sense of fulfillment that she had never experienced before as the weeks passed. The family began to include Maria in outings and daily activities. They visited parks, went to the library, and even took short trips to nearby towns. Maria watched the child's confidence grow with each new experience, her laughter echoing through playgrounds and libraries, a sound that had been missing for far too long. The bond between Maria and the child deepened, built on trust, care, and shared experiences. It was a connection that went beyond words, rooted in the mutual understanding of love, safety, and compassion at home. The evenings were filled with quiet moments of reflection. The family gathered in the living room, the child nestled between Maria and her parents. Reading books or playing simple games, the mother and father shared stories of the child's early years, and Maria listened, filling in gaps and providing comfort when the child became overwhelmed. Together, they created an environment of stability and warmth, a sanctuary where the child could thrive and heal. Maria also found herself thinking about the broader impact of her actions. She realized that her willingness to respond to a single cry had set off a chain of events that had transformed multiple lives. The child had been returned to her family. The family had been restored to hope. Maria herself had discovered a purpose and a path she had never imagined. She understood that miracles often began in the quietest moments, in acts of courage and empathy that seemed small, but had the power to change everything. One evening, as Maria and the child sat together watching the sunset from the garden, the child turned to her and said softly, "I'm glad you found me." Maria's eyes filled with tears. She nodded, holding the child close. "I'm glad too," she whispered, "and I promise I will always be here for you." The child leaned against her, content and secure, a living reminder of the fragile, the beauty of life, and the power of human kindness. The parents observed these moments with quiet gratitude. They saw the healing that was taking place, not just for their daughter, but for Maria as well. They recognized that her presence had been essential in bridging the gap between fear and safety, despair and hope. They spoke often with Maria about the future, about ways she could continue to be part of the child's life, and about the importance of her own growth and well-being. Maria embraced these opportunities. She began attending classes and workshops, learning skills that would help her find stability and independence. She continued to care for the child, teaching her, guiding her, and celebrating every small triumph. The experience transformed her perspective on life. She realized that courage, empathy, and persistence could create profound change, and that even one person's actions could ripple outward to touch many lives. As months passed, the child's recovery was remarkable. She laughed freely, explored confidently, and formed bonds with both her parents and Maria that were deep and enduring. The family's home became a place of joy, learning, and security, a stark contrast to the fear and uncertainty that had once dominated their lives. Maria witnessed these changes daily, each one a reminder of the miracles that could unfold. when someone responded to a cry for help with courage and compassion. One quiet afternoon, the mother turned to Maria and said, "You've done more than we could have imagined. You've helped her find herself again." Maria smiled, feeling a warmth she could not describe. She realized that her own life had been transformed in the process. She had discovered resilience, purpose, and the profound joy of helping another human being in need. The child, now fully comfortable and thriving, often spoke of Maria as her friend, guide, and protector. She laughed, played, and explored with confidence, secure in the knowledge that she was loved and cared for. Maria, in turn, found fulfillment in these moments, understanding that the quiet miracles of life were often hidden in daily acts of care, patience, and unwavering presence. And so, life settled into a new rhythm. The family, reunited and whole, experienced a profound sense of healing. The child thrived in her restored world, and Maria found a purpose she had never known. The moments of fear and uncertainty faded into the past, replaced by joy, laughter, and the quiet miracles of everyday life. Maria often reflected on the journey that had begun with a single cry in a dark alley. That cry had led to discovery, reunion, and transformation. It had created connections, healed wounds, and opened doors to new possibilities. She understood now that courage and compassion, even in the smallest acts, could create ripples of change that touched countless lives. And as she watched the child run through the garden, laughing and calling her name, Maria felt a quiet certainty that this was only the beginning. The miracles of life, she realized, often began in the simplest moments, and the bonds formed through empathy and care could endure forever. Time moved gently in the household, like the steady flow of a river, carrying with it moments of joy, laughter, and quiet reflection. The little girl, once fragile and frightened, had transformed before Maria's eyes into a confident, curious, and lively child. She laughed freely, ran through the gardens, and spoke openly with her parents, sharing thoughts and dreams she had once kept locked inside. Each day was a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Maria watched all of this with a quiet sense of fulfillment. She had become more than a caretaker or a friend. She was a trusted presence in the child's life, someone who had helped bridge the gap between trauma and healing. Every smile, every step forward, was a testament to the journey that had begun in a dark alley months ago, with nothing more than a single cry for help. Maria sometimes thought about that night, about the cold wind and the shadows, and how a small act of courage had set in motion a chain of events that changed multiple lives forever. The child had grown attached to Maria in ways that were unmistakable. She sought her out when she was scared, shared secrets she hadn't yet shared with her parents, and clung to her during quiet moments of uncertainty. Maria, in turn, had learned to navigate the delicate balance between being supportive and allowing the child to explore independence. It was a delicate dance of trust and love, built one small step at a time. The parents were grateful beyond words. They had offered Maria opportunities to stabilize her own life, helping her find work and education so she could have a secure future. Maria had accepted, but not out of obligation. She saw it as part of the new path her life had taken. She had always been resilient, but now she felt empowered, equipped not only to survive, but to thrive, and to continue helping those who needed care and attention. One sunny afternoon, the family decided to have a small celebration in their garden. They invited close friends, neighbors, and a few staff who had helped care for the child during her absence. Maria stood nearby, watching the scene unfold, feeling a deep sense of connection and belonging. The child ran around laughing, chasing butterflies and calling out to everyone, her eyes sparkling with happiness. Maria felt a lump in her throat as she observed the reunion, knowing that she had played a pivotal role in creating this moment of joy. The celebration was simple yet beautiful. Balloons swayed gently in the breeze, a small cake sat on the table, and laughter filled the air. The child approached Maria and handed her a small drawing she had made. A picture of the two of them holding hands, smiling under a bright sun. Maria accepted it, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes. It was a small gesture, but one that captured everything: the bond they shared, the trust that had been rebuilt, and the gratitude that the child felt in her own innocent way. After the celebration, Maria spent some quiet time with the child in the garden, away from the crowd. They sat on a bench under a large tree, the sunlight filtering through the leaves, creating patterns on the ground. The child leaned against Maria, her small head resting on her shoulder. "I'm happy now," she whispered softly. Maria hugged her gently. "I'm happy too," she said. "You've come so far, and you're safe. That's what matters most." The child's parents watched from a distance, their faces filled with quiet relief and gratitude. They saw how much the child had grown, how secure she had become, and how Maria had helped guide her through the most difficult moments of her young life. They realized that this connection was something that could never be broken, a bond built on trust, compassion, and courage. Maria's own life had changed in ways she had never anticipated. The experience had opened her eyes to the possibilities that existed beyond her narrow world of survival. She had discovered a sense of purpose, a feeling of fulfillment that came from helping someone in profound need. She had learned that courage was not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was quiet, subtle, and deeply human. Responding to a cry, taking a small risk, and offering care without expectation had created a ripple effect that extended far beyond the initial moment. The family continued to involve Maria in their lives, not just as a caregiver, but as a trusted friend. She was invited to family dinners, holidays, and outings. She watched as the child grew more confident, learning to interact with others, sharing stories of her experiences, and exploring the world around her with curiosity and joy. Maria felt a quiet pride, knowing that her actions had helped shape these moments of happiness. One evening, as the household settled into a calm routine, Maria sat with the child on the balcony, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. The child leaned against her, whispering, "I love you." Maria's heart swelled. "I love you too," she replied softly. It was a moment of pure connection, a bond that had been forged in adversity and strengthened through care, trust, and time. Maria also reflected on the lessons she had learned. She realized that even the smallest acts of kindness could create extraordinary outcomes. Listening, responding, and taking action mattered more than she had ever imagined. The child's life had been restored, a family had been reunited, and Maria herself had discovered a new path filled with purpose, hope, and possibility. The child's parents often expressed their gratitude in heartfelt ways. They spoke about Maria's bravery, her patience, and her unwavering presence. They explained how much it had meant to them to know that someone had cared enough to act when it mattered most. Maria listened, humbled, but she also understood that it was not about recognition. It was about doing what was right, about responding to the needs of another human being with compassion and courage. As the months passed, the child thrived in her restored world. She learned to ride a bicycle, play with friends, and even attend small classes and activities that brought her joy. Maria guided her gently through each new experience, offering reassurance when needed and celebrating every small victory. The child's laughter, once fragile and rare, now filled the house, a living testament to resilience, love, and the power of human connection. Maria noticed that her own perspective on life had shifted. She had always focused on survival, on meeting the immediate needs of herself and those around her. Now, she saw the broader picture, the impact one person could have, the way courage and compassion could ripple through the lives of others. She felt empowered to continue making a difference, not just for this child, but for others who might need care, attention, and understanding in the future. One quiet afternoon, the child asked Maria to sit with her while she drew pictures. They spread paper and colors across the table, and the child worked carefully, occasionally asking Maria's opinion or guidance. The drawings were simple, bright, and full of imagination. Maria watched, amazed at the transformation. The child, who had once been scared, withdrawn, and silent, was now vibrant, expressive, and full of life. Each drawing was a small celebration of recovery, a reminder of the journey they had shared. Maria often thought about the alley, the night she had heard the cry, and the moment she had decided to act. That decision had set off a series of events that none of them could have predicted. The child had been returned to her family. The family had been restored to hope. And Maria had discovered her own purpose and place in the world. She realized that life could change in a single moment, and that courage, empathy, and attention could create miracles beyond imagination. The household settled into a gentle rhythm, one filled with warmth, laughter, and care. The child's growth and recovery were evident in every aspect of life, from her playful exploration of the garden to her growing confidence in social settings. Maria remained a constant presence, guiding, supporting, and celebrating each milestone. The bond between them was unshakable, built on trust and shared experiences, and it became a source of strength for everyone involved. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with hues of gold and pink, Maria stood in the garden watching the child play. She felt a quiet sense of completion, knowing that the journey that had begun with a single cry had led to healing, connection, and joy. The child's laughter echoed through the air, a sound that symbolized hope, resilience, and the extraordinary outcomes that could arise from acts of compassion. The parents joined Maria, standing quietly as they watched their daughter. There were no words necessary, each understood the significance of the journey, the hardships that had been overcome, and the miracles that had unfolded. They were a family reunited, strengthened, and healed, and Maria had been an essential part of that transformation. As night fell, Maria reflected on the profound truth she had discovered. Life could be unpredictable, challenging and harsh, but moments of courage and empathy could illuminate even the darkest paths. She understood that every small act of kindness mattered, that listening, responding, and caring could create ripples of change far beyond immediate sight. And she knew that the journey was not only about the child or the family, it was also about the discovery of her own strength, compassion, and purpose. The little girl, now resting safely in her parents' arms, had her life restored.